And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another off-season supporter series chat. And joining me today, all the way out from Perth, Western Australia, is Melanie. Melanie, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be part of it.
Awesome. I love when people are excited to talk footy, especially now. But before we get into the footy, because that's why we are here, let's find out just the tiniest bit about you a little bit. So, just a little bit about yourself outside of the game of football.
It's really hard because so much of it is about footy. so
You're not
um,
the first
I
person to say that.
I'm working in information governance in the IT space, and I'm actually just moving into a little bit more of the privacy space. So I'm getting a little bit excited about my new role in that space. Outside of work, you can normally find me down the beach. I live really close to the beach, so Perth beaches, beautiful places. Or you can find me reading books for my book club, or I'm an auntie, so you can find me hanging around with my little nephews. And yeah, that's about me.
Awesome. So here we go. WA girl, I gotta ask this. Footy Med State. What is your favorite thing about the sport of footy?
It's such a big question, Nat, because there's so much that I love about footy. I think the game's just super exciting. You never know what's going to happen. There's always some chaotic moment in there. It's just so different to all other sports. But for me, the real thing that I love about it is the social aspect. I really find I found my group of people that I love. So, every second weekend, sitting down with my friends, watching the game together, having a chat. There's just something about that continued theme of footy through our friendship that, we've got a lot of memory stretching back a long way that cements our friendship, which is great.
Yeah, and then the crazy thing now is with social media and stuff like that, you get to meet fans everywhere else too, which I think is fascinating. I know we've chatted back and forth with some of your Fremantle friends that you know, including Leanne from Kansas, who we both know quite well, and then with me, I have a lot of Swans people who have attached to me in many ways. In fact, some of the stuff that's in my background that came from New South Wales. I kid you not. Some of the hats that are back behind me, those are signed member hats that were sent to me from some of my friends there. So it's the generosity shocks me at times, but I absolutely love it. So, all righty, we're gonna go back into your memories a little bit. Can you remember your earliest footy memory?
I think um, I didn't grow up as a footy person. My family wasn't like footy. My dad's from the UK. But I do remember, I have this really vivid memory of with my little brother and I watching, and it wasn't that far back, but in '92 we were sat watching the grand final and watching Peter Wilson kick a ball over his head backwards into the goals and kicking a goal, and Dennis Cometti commentating something along the lines of Peter Wilson, like a cork in the ocean, and the ball sailed through into the goals. And I just have this vivid memory of this is really cool. But actually going to footy, that's a really, I know I would have been quite young. We had, obviously being a WA girl, there wasn't like AFL teams around when I was little. But there was waffle, and I didn't like I said, I wasn't a footy kid, but the kids up the street used to get free tickets through their dad somehow. So we would just kind of trot on down with the free tickets with the kids up the street. We'd trot on down to either Claremont or Subiaco ovals and watch waffle games. And when I say watch waffle games, I used to, watch the crowd and run around the oval and see all of the cool things that happened at the footy and go find myself some hot chips or some lemonade or something like that to watch footy. So I don't have that, hey, I remember going to this game, but I do remember the actual going to the footy.
Awesome. All righty. So WA girl, I gotta ask this. I'm pretty sure most people will kind of figure it out. What's the club that we're going to be talking about today, and how is it that you came to support them?
Well, it's Freo. I'm a massive Freo fan. And I love origin stories, although my origin story probably would get me cancelled. like, like I said, my dad's from the UK, and so we didn't really do football in our house when we grew up. But my brother's 6 years younger than me, so he started to watch footy, but it kind of wasn't really a girls' thing in my house. Not
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was an intentional thing, but just 80s, there wasn't girls kind of football. So I didn't watch it as a kid. I just kind of watched it a little bit through my brother and his eyes and how he did it. But when I was quite young, my first proper boyfriend was a mad Collingwood supporter. And so through the relationship, I just started watching football going, oh my God, I really love this. And being very young and dumb, I went, well, I have to follow the team that my boyfriend follows. So I decided I was going to be a Collingwood supporter for a very short period of time. So this is the bit where I'm going to get cancelled. I started actually going, you know what, I really like this game. I love this game. And one of my good friends was a Freo member, and he started getting a few free, he had member seats, and one of his friends wasn't going. So he invited me along to a couple of games, and I was like, I really like this team. I really like this club. And now that I know what it's about, I'm like, I think I'm a Freo supporter. I don't think I'm a Magpie supporter. So from that day on, which would be 21 years ago, I think, I'm a Freo supporter since there. So it wasn't early on, it wasn't a family thing. My brother's a mad Eagles supporter, so we have a lot of differences when we watch football together. But I have had my membership with my bestie Chad for 19 years going on now. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
That's a cool story. And it's always interesting. And I know I've heard that before, that if you change teams, people get super offended. But I'm one of those, it's a feel. It really is a feel, because I know some people that they started with a club and it just didn't feel right. And then they find that one, and that's that feel. So you will get no judgment from me here again. US, I've said it on a few podcasts. I said US fans are very fickle. A lot of us are very much bandwagon fans. We support teams that win, and if you're not winning, they jump ship. The loyalty to fan bases here is not always as strong as it is in Australia. And I like I said, I tip my cap to some people, because there are people that I've talked to that have been fans for 30 years and have never seen a flag. And I tell them constantly, I said, I respect your loyalty, because that is fantastic. Because there are people over here in this country, if it hits 10 years, they're like, oh, I'm done. I'm done. And they pick somebody else. So 100%. So no judgment here. So I picked up on this, and I love this. When I find out that family members are on different parts of a rivalry, and with WA, with Fremantle and West Coast, there is rivalry, may be an understatement for some. So I got to ask, with the brother being a West Coast man, how is the banter come the Western Derby? Because I bet it's fantastic.
It's absolutely fantastic. And I think it's one of the things I really love about it. Like, it's fun. It's not, like I know that there is some people that really like get into it and are really quite aggressive with it, but it's fun. And there's always, like, it doesn't just have to be footy season. There's always you're a Freo fan, so that's why you'd say that, like it just comes into every part of your life. And dad, like he follows it. So he is an Eagles fan as well. But my brother and I that, but also now with my extended family. So my brother-in-law, my sister's husband is a bomber, and my brother's wife is a bomber. So funnily enough, two different families, but we've got bombers in there as well now. So it's just really nice to have that banter between all of the different groups. Unfortunately, none of my nephews are in the Freo camp. Can't quite persuade them into that area, but not too late.
Auntie will work her magic for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely, for sure. Not, hey, I absolutely love it. I love the band. Like I said, the banter sometimes for me is some of the best parts, because you can sit here and go back and forth as long as it's respectful, and as long as it doesn't get like crude. I think you can have playful banter, and I love the dry humor of the Aussie culture. Absolutely slays me at times. So absolutely love that. So all right, we'll go back to it. Can you remember the first Frio Dockers item you were given or bought?
Think it must be a scarf. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I've still got my scarf. It's one of the original, like the old colours with the red and green, and it's got all of the badges from every year of membership on that scarf. So I think that must be the first one, and it was given to me at one of the functions. So I think that was it. But my favourite piece is I've got from Ryan Crowley used to wear sweatbands, and so they were selling sweatbands and merch, and I've got a signed Ryan Crowley sweatband, which is, I think, my favourite because it is the weirdest, quirkiest item, and
I
Freo
love
is
it.
all about the quirky.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes those are the cool. Sometimes those are the coolest ones of all. So, and I love this because this leads to a great transition to the next question that I have is as I kind of mentioned earlier, American fan bases are different, and I think being a fan has very unique quality because everybody fans differently. There is no one fan that exactly fans the same way as somebody else. So, I think it's this unique thing that everybody kind of does differently. So I want to hear this just a little bit. Can you describe your fandom for Fremantle? I mean, as you said, you switched from Collingwood after you decided that though it was your boyfriend's team that Fremantle matched you a little bit better. So what is your fandom? Are you one of those you have to see every game that you possibly can? You go to trainings, you go to the games. What is your fandom of the Fremantle Dockers?
I think I fit into that feral Freo fan category in that I do go to all of the games, men's and women's games. I don't make it down to training very often. It's quite a long way from me down to Coburn. So I'm not that, I don't need all of their signatures. I don't need to be like at all
Mhm.
of the trainings for that. But
The badges and
yeah, yeah. But I do have I hate to miss games, and I really love the ability to be able to go to interstate games. So to be able to jump and do a footy trip like at least once a season. Obviously, that's been hard the last couple of years.
Mhm.
But being able to be part of that like traveling group and seeing Victorian fans or the South Australian fans, I love that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy being part of the membership base. I'm with Freo. I've been really lucky to be involved in something they've called the Members Advisory Forum. So they started it just before COVID hit, of a group of a group of fans, a group of members that come together with the club, and they ask us questions, and it's genuine feedback, and they've implemented quite a few of the ideas that have come from that group. So just being part of that and knowing that the membership voice is being listened to really, like, it's really valuable. And yeah, I think the Freo feral category fits my
again,
fandom.
there's no judgment here. I love the passion. Absolutely fantastic. I am some would call me a Sydney Farrell again. I'm the crazy one that if you see if you see my Twitter account at 4:45 if the Swans are playing, I am up and I am tweeting about it. And I've had the Swans even put up dedicated on like replying to one of my tweets. So I know
Love it.
exactly how you feel. I may be 13,000 kilometers from the SCG, but I'm sitting with my iPad and I'm cheering silently, but I'm supporting as much as I possibly can. So, alrighty, we jump to it. The next, this is a fun one for me again because Fremantle is a relatively younger team compared to
Yeah.
some of the clubs in here. So, can you remember the first Fremantle game you attended live?
I was trying to think about that a little while ago. My friend Chad, my footy mate Chad, and I were talking about when we think it was, and I can't remember that first. It's like my brain just doesn't go back to that first one. I know in the very first season that I did go, and I know I went to, I definitely went to a derby game in that first year, but I don't remember like the very first. It wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
obviously wasn't a pivotal like moment in there. I do
Mm-hmm.
remember the first season that I had my membership. It was Mundy's first season, so I have that like real memory of this young kid starting, but none of the actual, hey, this was that game. I'm probably really bad at the memories of like this game was held on that day. I'm not one of those stats people.
That's fine. Not everybody is, and you're completely okay. Alrighty. As somebody that is a self-processed Frio Feral, I'm gonna love hearing this because you've had some really good players. Don the purple and white, and even green at times. So I asked this: who is your favorite player of the past, and who's your favorite player currently donning the Dockers Guernsey?
Love this question because it's so hard and it challenges me so much. And because I think maybe I should have answered in the fandom part, I'm a really positive fan. It's all about the positive for me. And so every single one of the players that has ever played for Freo, I love them. I will love them forever. But you cannot go past the two, like for me, the two past players. Obviously, you've got to say Matthew Pavlich, but that's a really easy and a really boring answer. So, um, and I will discount that I'm pretending, I'm in denial that Mundy has finished playing football, so I'm not going to count him as a pass player yet. But Luke McFarlane would have to be one of my favourite pass players. He was just super reliable and just always, if he had the ball, you knew it was not going through those goals in the opposition end. So it would have to be Luke.
All right. And favorite current player?
Current players, again, that's so hard because I love them
There's a
all.
lot of them. You got a good squad there. You've got a very good squad there.
I love the kids that are coming through, and I am the kind of player that kind of fan, that loves the footy, the goals, the tricky, the specky, the on the run kind of goals. And I think Michael Frederick, Fast Freddy, with his super cartoon fast legs and just the way he can, he's not always there, but I think he is one of the most exciting players. And the way he can, just get that ball going so fast. I think he's got to be up there with one of my favourites, but it's so hard. I think Nathan O'Driscoll would come a very second, very close second favourite player. I think I love his sister who plays for AFLW, Emma, and I think Nathan, again, still a very new, very young player. Those couple of goals that he's kicked from pockets, just amazingly going in, just magic.
There's so many. There's so many to like on that Fremantle squad. Legitimately, like I've talked to a few Fremantle guys. There are so many kids that I just thoroughly enjoy watching. Like they are a team that if I can watch it, I will definitely watch it because Sarong and all of those and Brayshaw in the middle. Oh man, they're so much fun to watch, and they're I think they're going to bring plenty of success to Fremantle for sure. So I cannot wait to see that. So we'll go with this. I love this question because the sparkle in these people went in the people that I chat with eyes when I ask this question. Most memorable moment as a Freo Dockers supporter.
It's got to be, obviously we're a club that hasn't got our grand final win yet, but we'll get there. But it's got to be when we won the prelim against Sydney to send us into the grand final in 2013. It was at Subi Oval, so well before Optus, just being in that crowd and hearing the entire stadium chanting MCG, MCG, MCG. It's giving me goosebumps now because it was just a moment of, hey, we got to the grand final. This is something that has never happened. And oh my God, that moment, I will never, ever forget that moment. It was sensational. It did take me an hour after the game to realise that it had actually happened for it to cement that, oh my God, we'd won and I'm going to the grand final and I've got to figure out how I'm paying for those ridiculous flights.
Yeah, that the realization when it comes through is absolutely fantastic. Alrighty, so we went down memory lane a bit. Let's go to a little bit more current now, and I'm as everybody knows, I do AFL reviews, and I love kind of finding out how fans kind of process the season a little bit differently. So I kind of want to go through what were your thoughts on last season? I mean, a successful season, you make the finals, you get through it, you get through a tough elimination final against the Doggies that, I mean, that had more ups and downs than a roller coaster. If I'm being 100% honest with you, when I saw the final score, I went, what? Because it was so insane. So as a supporter, what were your thoughts on this last season?
I quite like to make very rash statements and like broad statements, and I'd said to like my footy friends and my work friends at the end of before the start of last season, I'm like, this season we're making finals and the next season we're to the grand final. So I kind of thought that was a bit of a we're not going to do that. So I was very, very happy when we actually did make finals. But I think there was so much to be positive about in that season. There was just so many things that held together that you could see our drafting and our selections had just really finally come together, and the team was playing as a team. So there was just so much to be positive about. But I think for me, the highlights, the Melbourne winning against Melbourne in Melbourne and winning against Geelong in Geelong was huge. They were just such big milestones that I just went, oh my goodness, this is a team that's going somewhere. We've really got that. We've got that that thing that's been missing about. If they were down, if they were behind, they just didn't give up. They just kept fighting and they managed to find a way. And so some of our wins weren't pretty and they ground them out, but that determination and that we're never going to give up, fight, I think is going to take them a long way. And then that Bulldogs game. That will stay with me for a long, long time. I had been the AFLW, the girls played Geelong down at Freo Oval that morning before the game,
Oh
and it was
boy.
freezing cold, and we only managed 2 behind in the
Mm-hmm.
entire game. And it was, as I said, I am a really positive fan. I could not find much to be positive about in that game, and it was just like, it was awful, and it was so cold. So then to take the journey from Freo Oval up to Optus, I went to the went to the pub in between, then went to Optus and sat there in that first quarter, and Freo were doing the same thing, and they were like 2 behind, and I was like, I can't sit through this. This is hurting my heart. And no matter how much me as a fan, and I'm sure other people in there, were urging and were just so desperate and were supporting as best we could to try and get them across, there was nothing that seemingly at that moment that could happen. But the fact that they turned it around and came from so far, I can't remember how many points down they were, turned it around and just fought, and the crowd fought, and the noise just built, and they just win. I don't know how they managed to do that. That just was exceptional. And then that feeling on the finish line will probably be up there with that Sydney prelim win. It's obviously a bit too close for it to be my favourite moment, but just knowing that we were through, and having that again, last minute spontaneous thing of, do I go? Do I need to go? Do I wait for the grand final? Do I go for the prelim game? And I was like, no, I'm going. I'm going to fly over. I'm gonna go watch Collingwood, Dockers Collingwood game. So I did, and it managed to meet up with quite a few of the Freo Twitter crew before the game at a pub in Melbourne, which was amazing. And while obviously the result of that game wasn't what anyone would have wanted it to be, just for those kids being there, the experience they would have got in front of that crowd. And I've been to, I went to the Dockers 2013 grand final, and I went to the WA grand final. I've never heard a noise like that Collingwood crowd at the NCG. I can't remember how many were in the crowd, but there was only about 6,000 Dockers people in that crowd. The rest were Collingwood, and the roar. And I'm not a Collingwood fan anymore, and so hearing that noise and knowing just the fandom that is there, and just going, oh my God, this is incredible. Obviously, it wasn't our day, but for those kids to experience that and be on that big stage and hear that noise, and obviously it would have been intimidating, but I think I predict big things from them, because I think they would have learned so much from that experience. And none of those kids have played that. I can't remember how many. I think there's 2 players that had played finals previously. Maybe I've got that wrong. Don't quote me on stats.
Well, you would think Monday would have played. Fife didn't.
And I think
Fife was out.
I
Maybe
think Sun would have played.
Rory Lobb might have with the Giants.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
Give or take.
Sun,
Not 100. I'd have to dive through, but there probably wasn't a lot of experience there, and I 100% agree with you. I think yes, it's a loss, yes, it stinks to lose, but that's battle tested, and they know what it takes to get there. They know going into the off season. So I agree with you. I see a lot of good things in the Fremantle Dockers, especially going forward. So we'll jump to the off season, which I think is a Fremantle Dock. I'm interested to see how you go because this was a weird off season for the Dockers, because such a great season, and then this exodus of 3 or 4 players from a very good team. But you do bring in some, Jager O'Meara, I think will bring some experience to your youthful midfield, which I think will give a little bit of depth. I think that's a good one. The one I'm fascinated on, especially for you, is Luke Jackson, because I don't really know where, what, or how he's going to fit this team, because you really can't put him at ruck because you've already got Darcy there. So you're pretty solid there. He's really not established as that forward type. So I'm interested to see how Longmuir, what he decides to do. So what are your thoughts on this? Because again, it's a little bit of an exodus, but a couple of good players come into a team that I think is still relatively young and still really talented.
I think I always get because I love the players so much, I really find it hard when they go, and they're still Freo players after. Like, I don't have any ill feeling to them, but Rory Lobb's done some things in the media that, like, he's not in that list anymore. I'm not upset for him to be
Burn
going,
some
and
bridges for sure.
he has definitely burnt some bridges. So, I'll still see how Low goes. I'll be excited to see how, like, the younger boys that have gone as well. So, it's hard. I hate off season. I hate the rumours. I hate the, like, oh, you've spent too much for him, or, like, we're talking about players, and I just find it hard to, like, see them as commodities with, like, they, that's just me. But I'm excited to see what Jackson can bring. I think I'm nervous and I'm confused as well about it, but I'm excited and I trust Bell. Like, he's a mastermind. He's done some really good things with, like, with, sometimes stuff that people haven't expected to happen. So I'm excited, but I'm very interested. I haven't watched too many of the pre-season games that they've had, but they've been into clubs, so they're, like, they're probably playing on different sides. So I don't know, but I know you mentioned Jago Romero, but he is the one that I am the most excited about. And I went to the Members Advisory Forum, and the AGM were on the same day at the end of last year. So we went along to Optus Stadium, and they had the, like, new recruits up on the stage, and they were interviewing them. And Luke's probably not a person they should put a microphone in front of. He's still a little baby, not quite there with the public speaking. But Jago just came up, and the knowledge and the leadership that he's going to bring is like, I'm really excited about that. But a couple of the younger kids and the mature age kids, I'm really excited about that as well. I think for me, mature age, like, if they didn't get there in the first chance, and I think the determination that comes with that to keep going and keep trying back, getting to that draft, and giving it a go again. For me, that builds character, and I think those, like, I really always have followed a lot of the mature age players and just meant, yep, you guys have got it. You just got a bit more maturity, obviously mature age, but that determination that's in there. And I'm struggling with his name at the moment. The players, and I should know that, who he's had a couple of goes at it, and I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the team. And the name will probably come to me in a moment. Sorry.
Always when you stop trying, it's always when you stop trying to think of
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it pops into your head. It's like looking for your keys. I can't find my keys. I can't find my keys. As soon as you stop looking, then you find it. It's usually the way it goes. Alrighty. So we'll let you think about that. And I keep, one of these days I'm gonna remember to change this question because I don't like the wording, and maybe it's just me personally, because I have it worded as, what are your expectations for next year? But I've stated to many, I hate saying expectations because footy is just bonkers at times when it comes to unpredictability, because nobody saw Collingwood doing what they did last year. Nobody saw the GWS Giants, the literally the floor falling out from underneath them, and the West Coast Eagles kind of the same thing. As a Fremantle Docker, you probably, the cheeky little grin for you as the Eagles literally imploded. Unfortunately, again, I have no skin in the game on this one, but so I ask you, what are your thoughts going into next year? Again, a little bit of a different team, yes, some exodus, but again, as you said, some exciting additions that we'll have to see what Coach Longmuir does, because there's so much there to be positive after last year.
I'm going to put it out there: dual premierships, 2023, men's and women's. That's a bold call, and probably a little bit tricky with the women's team with new coaches. But the reason for my premiership thing is 2013 was our first grand final appearance. So 10 years later, it just feels like the stars are going to align, and we're going to be there for that grand final. And I don't think that's too far out of the thing. We made it through the finals this year, so I think they would have learned from that. And I do think that there's some exciting stuff there. It's that goal kicking. We just got to get that goal kicking. And I would really, just listening to Fifey talk about his off season. It's his first off season. I know there's a lot of negative stuff about him in the media and on Twitter. It's his first off season without surgery, and I just think his trip to, where did he go? Nicaragua. Just when he came back from that, I feel like his mind is in a good place, and I have a feeling that he is going to come good this season. So I would love to say that. I just feel that like it would be nice for him to yeah, I'm the eternal optimist. I'd
I'm the
love to
same.
see
I
him
am the
have the
same
season.
way. I am the same
Yeah,
way. And I will say this, this is personally on five, as I want him to get through a season where he doesn't have to miss games because he's just such a fantastic player that I hate not seeing him on that lineup because he is such that impact player. I'm fascinated again, kind of like with Luke Jackson, where he goes because
yeah,
are his
yeah,
midfield days done? And it's weird saying that because I
yeah,
mean you don't win a Brownlow medal without being an incredible player, but are his midfield days done? Because I think they have really hurt his body to I think
yeah,
maybe going forward, but then you look at it, you go, well, his goal kicking is not exactly ideal. So how has his offseason been? Has he worked on his goal kicking style to where maybe he can go forward and be that center half forward that's the link play between them and the full forward line? Maybe not always have to go for goal, but be that consistent player that can maybe he can sub in the midfield for a couple of bounces, but for the most part, he stays forward as that big, strong marking target at that center half forward line, which I think may fit him quite well. Whether his game fits to it, we'll have to see, but it'll be fascinating. But I want to see Fife playing and want to see him healthy because it is horrible seeing such a great player
yeah,
be on the sideline so much. And I know he doesn't think like everybody else. He's not one of those that's only thinking about footy. He's got thoughts on the after footy life. So I just want him to get that that season where he can be proud of that he doesn't have to spend so much time on the physio table. So 100% with you. And I'm not even a
100%.
Dockers fan. So I all right, we're gonna have some fun with this next question. I absolutely love this. And I know you said you're not good with names, so we'll have to see how this goes. Is I'm being over here in America, we have a lot of people that like to tell that they want to be the general manager. They want to be the person that makes the moves. They want to be that person that puts their stamp on the team. So I'm going to let you do something really, really fun. For one day, I'm going to install you as the list manager for the Frio Dockers men's team. And all 17 teams are open. You can bring in one player from any of the 17 teams, one player to join the Dockers to make you Nostradamus and get you a premiership in 2023. Who's that one player and why?
I can hear my footy mates groaning because they know that this is a terrible thing to let me loose in. Coaching, nope. List manager, no. Um, I I I was I really, really struggled when Lockie Neal went. So if we could have Lockie Neal back, I would love that. But I also know that the team has moved on from that and our midfield is so good. Where would he fit into that space? Of course, Lockie Neal would fit into that space, but who would have to come out for him to go into there?
Mhm.
I don't say, is there then, like who was the Coleman medal last year? No, I don't think I want them in the team that don't quite fit. So it's
Be Harry,
really
that'd be Charlie Curnow from the
Curno,
Carlton
Carlton.
Blues.
Sorry, I should have said his name. Yeah. I mean, he might,
He'd fit there. He'd fit because he'd replace Lob because the biggest question you would have then is, as you
yeah,
kind of says,
who's going
the
to kick
goal
our goals?
kicker. So,
Yeah.
so could you find that full forward? Could you bring in a Tommy Hawkins? Could you bring in a Charlie
Yeah.
Curnow? Could you bring in
Tommy Hawkins is another one as
one
well. Like, yeah,
yep, one of the King boys, one
yeah,
of the two King brothers. You could bring in. I've even he's a WA boy. Bring Buddy Franklin
bring
over to
Buddy
don the
back.
purple. So
I did say that.
there's a lot of different possibilities. Again, to each their own, and it's
Yeah,
fascinating because you get people that Clayton Oliver, Marcus Bontempelli, they go for the flashy one, and then
yeah,
I've been fascinated by some of the ones that are like, well, we've got a weakness here, so we should go there. It's fascinating. Everybody's different. It's a fun question for me just because you kind of see how they fan. Do they fan with
yeah.
a marquee name on the marquee, or do they look for what makes their team better? So it's fascinating. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. So okay, now here's we're gonna this next one is a fun opinion one, and I absolutely love this, especially because with you being out in WA, is that the grand final during 2020 and 2021 found its way outside of
Hmm.
Victorian soil for the first time in history, going to the Gabba and then out in WA with Optus Stadium in 2021. And I was fascinated, even in 2021, the Victorian media started to kind of bring up a topic that it surprised me that they were like, should the AFL look into maybe making the grand final a traveling grand final? And again, I know comment section, the MCC has the 50-year contract. Let's put that on pause for
Yep.
just a littlest bit. For you, as a WA girl, are you one of those that you like the idea potentially of getting an Optus Stadium grand final again? Or are you one of those that you don't mind the tradition of the MCG because it does have that 100,000 and it does have that history of being where the grand final is usually played?
I think that's such like I think every single person answers this differently, and obviously Perth girl
Uh-huh.
will definitely have my WA bias in there, and I was so lucky to be able to get a ticket to go to that grand final, Demons and Doggies at Optus, and I was also lucky enough to go to the Dreamtime game that was also at
Mhm.
Optus, which both of those experiences were bucket list experiences. They're never going to happen again, probably because of that 50-year thing, but just knowing that those are things that I have seen forever as a, like as a footy fan at the MCG most of the time on TV because it is so exorbitantly expensive to get to from WA. Just having that ability to be able to share that to a bigger audience, and one of my really good friends' dads, who's been a Demon supporter for the entire 80 years of his life, was able to go to a grand final, and it's like it was an experience for him that he will never ever forget. And I just saw the joy that came from it. Obviously the joy of a win as well was really good for a Demon supporter.
Mhm.
I love the idea of, maybe it's every 5 years, maybe it's not every year. I love the idea of being able to go to South Australia, to Adelaide Oval, and to watch a grand final there, to the
Mhm.
Gabba, watch a grand final there. Not, like I said, not every year, and I do understand the tradition. I love the Melbourne tradition when, like the grand final is always at the G. So, like that's what we've always known. I was lucky enough to go to 2013 grand final, and the Freo Army, the Purple Army marched from Fed Square across the bridge to the G, and it was an experience. Like, we wouldn't have had that similar, we would have had a similar experience, but it was different. So I understand that, and I understand the Victorians want to keep it and, hold on to it for forever, and it's the VFL, blah, blah, blah. But that feeling of being at Optus and knowing that it was a brilliant show. They did such a good job. The lights were amazing. The crowd was full. The stadium was full. Okay, it's not 100,000 at the MCG, but 60,000 is amazing. And at 60,000, and some of that is new audiences, and it's not just the corporate that is at MCG of like the smaller number of fans that are there amongst the corporate fans. So it was like you could just see the red and blue of both teams across the stadium, and I would love for it to not be locked in stone. And obviously it is locked in stone, but I have, like, switching a little bit to my AFLW hat, there's been talk about locking that venue in, and it's purely, I think, because of venues and cricket ovals being difficult at the time of year with the AFLW
Mhm.
grand finals. But there was talk of locking it into Marvel Stadium, and that hurt my heart so much, because that Adelaide Oval, filling it with 53,000 people watching like that grand final, and like the thought of, well, Freo will get there one day, and having the top of the ladder not being able to play in their home state, it like would be awful for the sake of not booking venues, and just don't want them to lock it in to that until it's actually the competition bedded down a little bit. So I don't, yeah, I maybe every 5 years, maybe there's a dream of that could happen.
Hey, I absolutely love it. I threw up like the Olympics every 4 years.
Yeah.
Again, I know the contract and I know it, but it was just very interesting that the Victorian media were the one that brought it up.
Mm.
That was the part that surprised me, because again, the Victorian media again are primarily tend to be
Mm-hmm.
Victorian centric. Again, I hate saying Victorian bias because I think it's just there's so many teams to talk about. There's a lot more. I think that's the reason why sometimes interstate clubs don't get talked about as much.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I have friends in every single club, so I try not to offend any of them. I have Victorian fans, I have WA friends, SA friends, Queensland friends, New South Wales friends. So I try to be as neutral as I can when it comes to it. If it's at the MCG, that's okay. If it goes to a traveling, I think it would be just fine. Are you going to get the corporate money? No, but sometimes I think we need to stop worrying about the corporate money and just make sure it's there for the fans, because that's what's going to bring more corporate, is those
Exactly.
fans going to the game and buying the corporate stuff. So again, so alrighty. So we go from that to this upcoming season has another event that I'm very fascinated on, and that is the Magic Round ripoff of the Gather Round. Don't get me started on the name. I think it's kind of shall we say. I can't really think of a proper way of kind of saying it's disappointment with me,
Yeah.
but I'm one of those. I'm fascinated by this because I know the NRL does Magic Round and it's always so well attended. But as I've stated in a couple, that's because Queensland and New South Wales
Hmm.
are primarily where they are. You have, yes, you have the Storm, so you have Victoria, but it's one team. That's it. Where I think footy's a little bit different because you do have 5 states worth of teams. So I'm fascinated to see how this goes. I think it's going to be well attended. I sure hope so, because if the premier from South Australia, if it doesn't, he's going to look like a complete and utter noob. We'll have to see. So I asked this: what are your thoughts on Gather Round, and do you plan on attending?
I'm not going to attend. I sounds really bad. I honestly can't think of anything worse than an entire like whole lot of people descending on on Adelaide Down and just trying to navigate that. That just doesn't appeal to me. And I'm wondering if that is maybe because it's Melbourne, maybe because it's Adelaide. I have this idea of, wouldn't it have been great? And I know the stadiums are not suitable, they're not big enough, but wouldn't it have been great if that was Northern Territory or Tasmania? Like the idea of the draw card to places where there isn't like regular football. I know the attendances wouldn't be as big, so I understand. I understand why that place was picked. I'm not loving the idea. I'll watch it, but I'm not going to go. But I think part of the reason why I'm really not loving the idea is Freo has been shunted to a time slot that
Mhm.
like no one is going to go to both in person, but also at like because of daylight saving or because of like time differences. It's smack bang in the middle of a workday. So I think it's either 3:10 or 4:10, 3:10 maybe. I can't remember what the time is, but
Mhm.
like so
I remember
viewers in
hearing this
Perth aren't
argument.
going to be able to watch it, but also people in Adelaide aren't going to go to that because it's Norwood Oval. So unless it is someone that's flown in specifically for that, I just think that the crowd size is going to be really low. So given that it's Freo Giants, I just think the narrative in the media is going to be quite negative about it, going, why was there no crowds at that one? Whereas the ones that are at Adelaide Oval are going to have bigger crowds because it's, easier to get to when it's during the daytime. So I just feel that we got shunted a little bit with the time slot, and I don't understand the concept of adding an extra round to an already very long season when, again, my AFL hat, um, we can't even get more than 10 games in the AFLW season, but we can magically just add this extra round that I know the South Australian government is putting money in towards it, but we can suddenly magically find all this money to do this. It just doesn't sit right with me.
I want to give you a hug because it was one of the things that went through my head too, because and it's actually my next question is about the AFLW, but we'll stay on this just for a second. I agree. I've heard this comment when it comes to Fremantle that they're a team that you would think deserves to be at the Adelaide Oval in a spot where more people could see, because they are, I think many people look at them as a finals contender. They're not a bottom four side like GWS is. So it is kind of one of those, you look at it and you go, they really think about that when they make, again, the fixture is kind of weird. I've talked to some people that they absolutely adore this. My North Melbourne fan, the vitriol that she had about their spot, which I think they're out in one of the wine countries that I think that the venue that they have only is like
Yep.
3,000. So it was very fascinating on her vitriol. And again, I 100% understand that why why is it such a small ground that they're going to be playing on? I know it's country footy and they're trying to spread it out through all of South Australia. 100% understand that. But I mean, can you not find at least a 5,000 seater? I don't know.
Yeah.
Again,
And
it's a weird question on that, but
yeah,
I 100% agree. It'll be fascinating. I just, like I said, my one worry that I have is it rains.
yeah.
That is my one worry, because that
Adelaide
Adelaide
Oval,
Oval is going to be destroyed by
but also
Sunday.
Norwood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
Norwood
it is not
Oval.
perfect, if it is not perfect
Yeah,
weather, Adelaide Oval is going to be a mud pit by Sunday.
yeah. So it's like Optus Stadium this season, they weren't like we had to switch a couple of there was supposed to be double headers for the
Mm-hmm.
women's and the men's. They couldn't play the women's game there because the ground wasn't able to hold up to it. So that was like they weren't able to have two games. So Adelaide Oval just astounds me. I'm not like if it rains, like I mean maybe it might be like going back to the 90s and watching the mud pit football, which might be quite
Might
exciting.
be
And
interesting.
I'm not too worried about. I know a lot of people were upset about Freo getting pushed to Norwood Oval. I'm not too worried about that. If it's suitable for AFLW, it should be suitable for AFLM, and so it might bring up some conversations about is it a suitable ground for AFLW. So I'm kind of okay with that. It's the timing that really does
Uh,
bother me in there. But I
100
agree. If it rains,
100%
it'd be
understand.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the weather that entire week, because if Adelaide gets rain, it's going to be fascinating to see how the groundskeepers try to keep
Yeah.
Adelaide Oval from being absolutely destroyed so early in the season. Because I mean, this is only round 5 or 4 or 5, so it's very early in the
Yep.
season.
Yep.
So I worry about the Adelaide Oval if it does, because I mean, those grounds people are going to be working their absolute tails off if there's any kind of inclement weather. So we go to my next question, and we've talked about it, and I absolutely love this. Like I said, I gave you a round of applause. I am a huge advocate for AFLW. I do AFLW round reviews. I absolutely adore this version of footy, because honestly, in my opinion, I think this is a huge growth opportunity for the
Mm-hmm.
AFL. I think the AFL needs to really look at this as this is their growth spot. This is their growth place. There are so many young girls, so many youth girls and young women that are coming up playing footy now that are going to have that chance to play AFLW because of the AFLW getting started. So I absolutely love this. So you said you go to games. So you're a huge AFLW fan.
Yep.
Your thoughts on Fremantle's season again? Was it ideal? Absolutely not. But I will say this right now, as a person that watched every single game, I felt horrible for Fremantle because you were so snake bitten this season. Whether Kiera Bowers getting COVID at the start of the year and she really didn't recover the normal Kiera Bowers until about round 6. And that was hard for me because you're so used to her being the tackling machine, this all around great player. And it took her so long to kind of get her lungs back. And then injuries and injuries. And I just felt horrible for Fremantle, because this is a club we've seen top of the ladder in the final spots, always in the finals, always competitive, and they just did not have that type of season. So it was frustrating for me as a fan, because this was a team I really thought was going to be contending, and unfortunately, the way this year went, it just didn't occur.
Yep. It's so hard to sum up that season. I think I was listening to Hayley Miller talk, and it's hard for them as well because they had like the 2 seasons in the 1 year. So, like quite a successful season 6 where like we made it through and we played Adelaide in the prelim. And to go from that to season 7 in the same year, it just was all kinds of like unfortunate thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think the fact that like the seasons, they didn't have an off season. They didn't know when the season was going to start. So it wasn't just, it was injury after injury after injury when the season started. But prior to the season, Turbo or Kiara getting COVID, Hayley Miller not having a preseason because she had an ankle injury. So, 2 of our big names immediately out. And then add Judd and, Cara and Ebony to the mix as well. Like we've got 4 of our super experienced players just gone for most of the season. Well, sorry, like not Turbo and Hayley. They started the season, but like they weren't in fit form until, like you said, till partway through the season. So it was losing Steph Kane, losing Gemma, and losing also Jazz Stewart to inactive, not to expansion teams, but just the disruption to the like solid core of that group that had gone to the prelim, I think was just such a big thing to try and recover from. And for me, I don't think Steph Kane was given enough credit for just how good she was on the wing and just how much we did miss that player, especially with Turbo not so great as well in the start with COVID. But I do think then, like I said, I'm always a positive supporter. I've got to find something, because otherwise what's the point? What's the enjoyment of it? So I do think that, yes, it was the worst run of injuries, and nothing was going to make that season go well. But the fact that we played so many of our young players ahead of their schedule, ahead of where they would be, the fact that like players like Orla Lally, who like she was in Ireland, she was playing, I don't know what tournament it was, but like playing a massive big tournament which they won. The week that she turned 21, jumped on a plane during that week, came out to Perth and was actually playing in a practice match down in Mandurah in that first week, the week that she turns 21, the first time she's actually out there, and she's playing then when the season starts. Like her first games of AFLW, learning the game while she's actually playing on the top level, that would never happen in the men's competition. So like just seeing those kind of things, and some of the young kids that were out there that like still in high school were out there playing ahead of where I feel that they would have played, I think hopefully will like lead to some development in the next season. There's no possible way, I don't want to say it out loud, but that season of injuries, like in one game where we're losing concussion and like with JC going out or Janelle Cuthbertson going out.
The Brisbane game at the start of the year.
Oh, the Brisbane game, that just like
Cuthbertson going down. There was one other one all within the span of like 3 minutes. It was insane.
Yeah. And I was like, what is going on? So I think it was really tough. It was really tough. And like obviously Trent is no longer the coach. So that's a bit confusing to me, but I do see like the people that they're interviewing for the new role sounds, obviously from rumours on Twitter. I would love to see Lisa Webb or the other woman that they're interviewing, Martine Pearman, like both women with amazing experience in Waffle W and in like footy in WA. It's super exciting to see if they do get it, what they will be able to bring to the team. So I think there's positives for 2023, but 2022 was tough, and I could talk about AFLW forever.
Season 7 was a difficult one for sure. And again, for a very proud team. And again, Cooper getting let go kind of shocked me. I really feel bad, because if they let him go because of season 7, I really kind of looking to go, what are your expectations? Because I really don't understand. I mean, if it leads to a capable replacement that has waffle connections and has women's footy connections there, that's perfectly fine. I 100% understand that. But if you only let him go because of season 7, that's a bitter pill for me to swallow, because none of that was his fault. 90% of what happened last season was nothing to do with Trent Cooper's game plan or how he handled things. So I don't know. Maybe it's the coach in me, but I don't know. Like I said,
I have a feeling there's I have a feeling there's more to it. But not something.
I kind of hope so. I really, for his sake, I hope so. Because if it's only season 7, that's really, really harsh. Really harsh. Alrighty. More to positive, as you said, you're super optimist. As you said, you love talking AFLW. Do you have a favorite player currently on the Dockers list for the women?
Again, same as the boys. It's really hard to pick one. Obviously,
I can argue with you on that one.
I'm gonna talk about 2, if that's okay, because obviously Kiara Bowers is the most incredible footballer, men's, women's, I have ever seen. She is just, when she's on and she's tackling, like there is just nothing better to watch. She's like, I don't know if you saw the derby that we had at Optus Stadium a few years back, where she even tackled a streaker. That
Uh-huh.
should have been added to her tackle count
I don't know
for
if
that
I don't
game.
know if
But
you've heard it, but Craig Wessels, the yank on the footy, jokes. He says that if any men's team in WA needs a tackling coach, Kiera Bauer should be the first person they should call
absolutely,
because
absolutely,
she's an absolute tackling machine. I love
she
watching
is.
her play because she plays the game so physically and she plays the game so tough. I absolutely love Turbo. She's so much fun to watch, and I have to agree with Craig on this one. I think she's one of the best tacklers I've ever seen, men women combined.
I agree. I agree. But I have to pick a less obvious one, and she's only been there for a little while, and it is, I guess, a little bit obvious. But Anya Tai,
Uh-huh.
she is
Love her.
just exciting, and just such a journey to get there. Of like, she came here just pre-COVID, and unfortunately did her ACL. I was at the practice match down in Mandurah where she did her ACL, hadn't played any AFL yet, and my heart just broke because I saw it on the other side of the oval, and just the way she got up, I was like, oh God, that's an ACL.
Yeah.
And then to come back from that and do a second ACL, just about when the next season was starting, heartbreaking for, again, someone from Ireland who's been here through COVID, not being able to go back and see her family. I think she missed like a family wedding. Um, so that story for me, like, it's always all about the story for me. Just watching her come back from that recovery and just hearing Hoops talk about her, and also Michaela Tukarena, just hearing him talk about them, about how exciting they were going to be, never having seen them, just going, oh, he's really talking these two players up, and then watching Anya start playing and just growing in that game. She's still had only a couple of seasons now, but she's just so exciting, and the kick that she can manage. Going back to that Brisbane game that we mentioned, one of the commentators said, oh, that's past her limit. She's not going to be able to get that one. And I'm like, oh, mate, you have not watched her play, because it was on the 50 and bang, went through the goals, no problems whatsoever. That long kick is something that you don't see all that often in the AFLW, and it's exciting. But the height of her and the ability for her to scoop the ball off the ground, being so tall and just pick it up so gracefully. Obviously, that's the Gaelic skills coming through in there. I just think she's so exciting.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites to watch. Anya Tig, absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love watching her play. So, alrighty, as I've said a few times in a few of these episodes, I have not been to Australia. It is on my bucket list. It is on my thing to do. And I've actually had a few people message me because the first few episodes I said the SCG and the MCG, and I stopped and they went, mate, why don't you want to come to the Adelaide Oval? Why don't you want to come to the Gabba? Why don't you want to come? Okay. If I can get to all of them, I will try. Unfortunately, finances are not exactly easy sometimes, but on my bucket list, I would love to get to Australia to at least see some games out there. So I'm doing some research. So when I
Awesome.
go, I'm completely ready. So I've got two questions on that. As an American, we love our food at our sporting events. So I have to ask, favorite food when you go to the footy?
Okay, so I think I'm probably not the best to ask, because I'm not a pie fan. A traditional pie is obviously what people go and have at the footy, but it's not. It's not for me. Hot chips are always got to go get the hot chips, and Optus does do some bloody good hot chips. In the middle of winter, always really good. But Optus has started doing that's like it is actually quite good for food. I know some of the little things aren't good, but each little food stand has different food, which is different to what they had at Subi Oval. And one of them does this tiny roast potatoes with veggie chili on top and sour cream and cheese. And oh my God, that is really good. But AFLW again, their games are held at Freo Oval, and Freo Oval, I know Perth is a long way from Melbourne, so if you can, I know expenses, it's a long way to get to Perth, but Freo Oval for women's games is something else. It's just an amazing experience, and their Fremantle markets are right next door to the Oval. It literally, like, you walk out the ground in 2 minutes, you're in Freo markets. So my favourite thing before the AFLW games is to go down, have a wander around the markets and get the food from there. So a souvlaki, a bao bun, like they have whatever type of food you want in there. Grab that, take that into the ground and eat that while I'm watching the footy. Excellent.
Fantastic. Yeah, the hot chips actually that has become a very, very popular one. Surprisingly, yeah, you would think it seems like every two or three you makes you two out of every three you get the pie. But the hot chips has been the has been the next most popular. So that has not shocked me a bit. So all right, here's the coup d'etat. When I go to the game, I gotta find a seat. I'm trying to find the best possible place to sit to watch the game because I want to be able to see as much as I can. So I'm getting from each fan, where is your ideal place to sit when you go to the footy?
It's not where my members' seats are. I love our member seats, and we will stick with them for a long time. We're on the ground, so tier one at Optus Stadium, and we're like midway between the 50-meter and the goals. So we're like on a nice angle and on a
Mm,
little bit of an elevation. But the absolute perfection, which in a little bit out of my friend's budget for the members tickets, is on the wing in the second tier at Optus Stadium on the coaches side, underneath where the
mhm.
coaches are. I've sat there a couple of times for different finals or for different AFLW games, and just being that elevated, like just in seats called level 3 at Optus, um, and just having that elevation to be able to see the game plan, it actually helps me understand the game a lot better because you're not up in the gods, you're not way up in the 500s,
Yep,
but you're high enough to be able to see that. But it does take away from the, like when we are on the, I'm not going to say we're really close to the fence, but on that ground level, you can hear and you can
yep.
yell and the players can hear when you're yelling at them. So yeah, I love that second tier or tier 3, sorry, just and one day I'll be able to say that at MCG. Actually, the Collingwood tickets we had were pretty awesome tickets at MCG. But
Awesome. Yep. The wing, that second tier, no matter MCG, tends to
yeah,
be the most popular on the wing because they said you can see everything. So
yeah.
there's a few that have said the cheer squad because if you want that atmosphere, but I 100% understand. So all right, last question that I have for each of these, and I love asking this question because it's been fun to kind of find some of these games. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen, live at the ground, on the telly, doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen.
Ooh, yeah, I'm going to say 2 if that's okay. I
That is
think I've already
perfectly fine.
mentioned it.
I've had one person do like three or four, so two is fine.
I've already mentioned it. That the Sydney Freo prelim, 2013 at Stobie Oval is like just for me the best game. Um, I think being there like the week before the win in Geelong, where the Geelong Advertiser had said bring your tissues because they're not going to win and blah blah blah. Like that was amazing and will remain as up there. But that Sydney, just being there, and knowing that we were going to win, I obviously didn't know we were going to win until half an hour after the game when it finally sunk in. But the boys that I was with loved it. And I think part of the reason it was so good is like it was the first time getting to the grand final. But we had this group of 8 I can't remember exactly how many, 8 guys behind us. And obviously because it was finals, we weren't in our members' seats, we were in different seats. We had very good seats on the second tier at Subi. And this group of guys behind us that all had their faces painted, and they'd obviously watched football together for many, many years. And they were chanting, they had these different chants for different players that they obviously have done for years together. They had this one for Lee Spur, who was obviously playing at the time. And it was if Lee got the ball, if he'd marked the ball and he was waiting to take a kick, they would just be doing this, wait for it. And all of them were doing it. And they would go, wait for it. And then when he kicked, they would just all erupt with Spur. And so by the end of the game, they had the entire block joining them. And just with this, like, group of random people all together that became part of the same thing. And the MCG chant at the end was just so powerful. But the other game that I'm going to say is my favorite is a favorite for a very strange reason, and probably a very Freo type thing, I guess. I can't remember what season it was, but it was at Subi Oval. It was quite a long time ago. Freo were playing Hawthorn. It was a terrible game. We lost. We were thrashed, absolutely thrashed. So why would it be in my favourite games? It was chucking down with rain, torrential rain. You could barely see the players on the ground. There was water running down the tiers at CB Oval. So, like just absolutely chucking it down with rain. My friend Chatty and I were sitting in ponchos watching or trying to watch this game and just almost in not hysterics, but we were just laughing. So like it was cold, it was horrible, it was, like a game that you really by all rights should hate. But there was just something about this determination to sit this out, to stay there. We're never going to leave. You never leave before your team finishes. We're just going to stick it out. We're not going to go stand undercover. We're just going to sit here and stick it out. And I think part of the reason that I love that game so much is that we think about it quite regularly. And when we eventually get that big premiership and get that cup, those are the type of games that we're going to remember as part of the journey to get there. And we've had a lot of downs. We've had a lot of, as other clubs have as well. But I don't think people understand the party that is going to happen and the way that Freo will erupt when that eventually gets there. And it's those kind of memories, the determination and the just getting there that makes those kind of games. By all rights, that should be the worst game I've ever watched. But it was great.
It's the different memories. It's the different memories. Everybody remembers things differently. Absolutely love that. That is fantastic. I love when they have almost a different meaning. It's not just
Yeah.
about the footy or the result. It's about kind of the memories. Absolutely love that. So that's going to do it for my questions. That's everything I have. Mel, this has been fantastic chatting with you. I love the passion that you have for Fremantle. I love finding somebody else that has a positive attitude as much as possible. I'm very much the same way with you. It irritates me when I see online that people are bashing the player or bashing the club. It's like, it's totally not what I do. And again, everybody fans differently, but it does get frustrating when I feel like, I'm like, do you not notice that you're doing this to a person? You're doing this to the club that you supposedly say that you care about. So it's a fascinating way to look at it. So thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. This has been a fantastic chat.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our episode again today. More and more episodes are still coming out again. I'm still trying to find VFL, WAFL, and Sandford fans to chat about their clubs. We're getting closer and closer to March when the AFL starts. Keep an eye out. I'm going to try to find some more. I'm going to hopefully do an off-season review and a pre-season, hopefully with a special guest before the season gets started in March. And then, as always, our round reviews for the AFL season. So catch that back up to us very, very soon. And we will be back again with another episode very, very soon.